there was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen, and who fasted sumptuously every day. At his gate lay a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who longed to satisfy his hunger with what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs would come and lick his sores. The poor man died and was carried away by the angels to be with Abraham. The rich man also died and was buried. In Hades, where he was being tormented, he looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. He called out, "Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am in agony in these flames." But Abraham said, "Child, remember that during your lifetime you received your good things, and Lazarus in like manner evil things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. Besides all this, betwixt you and us is a great chasm fixed, so that those who might want to pass from here to you cannot do so, and no one can cross from there to us." He said, "Then, Father, I beg you, send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, that he may warn them, so that they will not also come into this place of torture." Abraham replied, "They have Moses and the prophets, they should listen to them." He said, "No, Father Abraham, but if someone goes to them from the dead, then they will repent." He said to him, "If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, neither will they be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead."
Well, Raymond, this is pretty challenging stuff, isn't it? It's a pretty stark sort of story, isn't it?
It's a very challenging story, it's hard to know where to begin with it, but because there's so much in it. But whereas often in Jesus' sayings the emphasis is on forgiveness, I think here it's different. That here is somebody who is being held responsible for his actions, and his feet are being held to the fire.
I know, it's very, this sort of graphic sort of hellfire stuff. I mean, how much is that, is Jesus sort of reflecting current Jewish thought, do you think, or the sort of you know, what were people thinking about what happened after death at that time?
It could well be so that they thought in what's called an apocalyptic framework, where there is this sort of rigid rewards and punishment scheme that kicks in at the end of time.
Yes.
And this parable is about the end of time, when there's a big reckoning.
Yeah, certainly strong stuff. I mean, and very, graphically drawn characters. You know, this rich man sort of going up the gate with his great sort of, you know, triumphal procession and feasting lavishly every day, and then poor old Lazarus, the sort of beggar at the gate. You know, and the dogs licking at his sores. But I guess the reality is, there's probably plenty of parts of our world and even our city where you know it's not too different, is it?
Well, I think this is where this parable is so telling, that we live in a world which is actually like this, which is still like this, and they keep saying now that the rich-poor gap is getting wider, and it's actually getting worse rather than getting better.
Yes. There's an interesting book, I know a number of people have been talking about at the moment, called The Spirit Level, you know, these sort of spirit level things that builders use, and this whole thing about the gap, and I think in New Zealand too, the gap growing between the rich and the poor, and you know, sociologists, people who do this sort of thing, have worked out that societies like ours and others with big gaps between the rich and the poor actually have much less social cohesion and social stability and all sorts of, I think, social indicators and markers. And in some ways that's not surprising, is it? You know, the more polarised we get.
I think that it is actually saying more than that. That if you have a social situation either in a country or in the world which has these very wide gaps, you have an inherently unstable situation, and that one day there will be hell to pay.
Yeah, well,
this is what this is saying.
Yeah, and that's the real challenge of it, because one of the things that I really notice in this is that the rich man, Dives I think he's called in the Latin sort of version of it, well, he doesn't even see this beggar, and yet, and even in the way the story's cast, when he sees him sort of over that great gold fixed, he still wants to order him around and get him to, go and tell his brothers what to do. He's still only seeing him as a bit of a minion. He's not really seeing him. I mean, it's interesting. Even Abraham sees him as a, Lazarus as a real person.
Yes, I can
they're
remember
both children of God.
A friend of mine who visited South Africa a few years ago, and she was an American, and they were driving on the road, and there was a gang there of black South Africans in a road gang, and she said to her friend, who was a white South African, "Who are those people over there?" And she said, "What people?" In other words, she couldn't even see them. Yeah. And here's the challenge to really see, and I suppose the challenge for us is to think about our world and the inequalities in our society, and what we do about it, what we do about it now, not just waiting for sort of some day in the never. Well, eventually the majority take over, you see.
Yeah. Okay. Oh well, a very challenging reading and lots to think about as we take it away with us.
There is. Yes, there is.